welcome to my super casual YouTube channel. Today's super casual topic that I'm just going to sit down and talk about like we were just casual little friends sitting and talking in a dorm room. Today's topic is going to be on being alone in college, the pros and cons of being alone, and kind of feeling selfish for being alone. Like, as an introvert, I'm debating whether or not I'm indulging too much or if I'm fine with just how much I'm indulging. So of course we're making a little pros and cons list as to the pros and cons of being alone, obviously. Okay, one pro about being alone in college and going on your own little journey as an introvert is that you don't have to compromise your beliefs, values, desires, whatever other synonyms you can think of for anybody else when you spend majority of your time by yourself. So I've had to kind of rebel. That's too strong of a word. Hold on. I've had to distance myself from people who feel the need to be around other people all the time, simply because I want to indulge in my own interests. And I feel like when you're a part of a group or you're constantly with somebody else who doesn't indulge in their own interest for the sake of other people, you constantly are thinking about other people, you're constantly compromising your own comfort, you're like, you might be contradicting your own beliefs. I don't know. You are just constantly in the mind of other people. One of my friends, we were having a conversation a couple of years ago, my ex-friends, it feels really childish to say, like, one of my ex-friends. It's like, how old are we? One of my old friends. Can we say that about people who you're not friends with? One of my old friends, because it's like, yeah, they're expired, but I'm not going to say ex-friend. One of my old friends and I were talking about the idea of when you're with other people, you do kind of cater your personality to fit them. So it makes it super hard for you to know exactly who you are if you don't spend a lot of time alone, because, like, whoever I'm next to is who I'm going to be for them, with them. So I've kind of stopped wanting to do that, and I really find a lot of joy in going on, car rides alone, or going on walks alone, or sitting alone in the cafeteria. I love doing that because it provides me my own downtime all the time whenever I feel like it. Versus when you are with other people, yeah, you might experience the joy of being with community, the joy of being with community as if it's like so much better. But you may find yourself being like, do I like who I am when I'm with these people? Do I like these people? I found that, especially through my time at being in a small college, like, when you're in a small college and you don't necessarily mesh with a lot of people, I just got a text from my job. Sorry. When you don't mesh with a lot of people, it's really hard to, like, talk yourself into enjoying socializing, because it's like, well, this is like the pick of the litter that I have. Like, these are the friends that I've been offered. So I'm just going to take it because, like, we're the most similar, even though we don't super get along and we don't really enjoy each other that much. Like, they're what I have. And so as a senior now, I've kind of decided to just stop doing that and to just live by whatever the heck I would like to do. So the pro number one is just not having to, like, compromise your comfort. A con of being alone in college is feeling lonely, okay? Like, obviously. I go back and forth sometimes between whether or not, like, I'm actually lonely, or if I just am jealous of other people who have meshed with other people better than I have. Sometimes when you're sitting alone, like, most of the time I feel very comfortable, because when you've done something a certain amount of times, like, I've had to sit alone a lot. When you've done something a certain amount of times, it gets easier and easier every time. You get a lot more comfortable. But some days I'll, like, hear people laughing, Or I'll see how close, you can just tell sometimes how close people are and see how comfortable they are. And you're like, I kind of want that one day. A pro about being alone is that you're very self-sufficient, and that you're not codependent on other people. A classic college example is when you're alone in the dining hall. So most people like to be with other people in the dining hall, but when you're self-sufficient, you could like to be with other people. Like, you could sit with other people. I've sat with some people once this semester out of the whole semester. Like a group I actively sought out, like a table, because it was like all people that I liked. But it reminded me that, like, oh, I'm so happy that I have the option to do this, because I didn't want to. Most people in college will like coordinate times with the people that they want to eat lunch or dinner or breakfast, whatever the heck with, just so that they can catch them, and just so that they mostly like don't look lonely. So it's very self-sufficient to just eat within your own time, like to not have to be like, hey, when are you eating dinner? And somebody's like, it's 7:30, and you're like, oh, 7:30. Okay, cool. We can eat dinner at 7:30. It's like, no, I'm just gonna eat whenever the heck I want to. Also, I mean, I mentioned this earlier, but it ties into like everything I'm going to be saying, the idea of compromising. You don't have to compromise a lot when you're alone. You just can act on whatever the heck you want to act on. And that's so nice. Like, I don't have to compromise what time I want to eat dinner, because I'm going to eat alone. And I'm completely fine with that. A con about being alone, which I don't know if this is going to tie into the first con, but you don't know about your missed opportunity with people. I kind of struggle with this in the way that I recognize that college is a very amazing place to be, in the way that it's not the best 4 years of my life, for sure, like especially as a pandemic college student. I don't even know if I'm considered a pandemic college student, just because I lived through the pandemic in college. Like, I feel like a pandemic college student is somebody who like graduated in the pandemic or entered within the pandemic, because I was like a junior when the pandemic hit. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, the idea of missed opportunities. So sorry. Although I recognize that college isn't the best 4 years of my life, I do recognize that college is the one time where you are around people your age, that have interests of your own, and that you got to choose your own institution. So like, you got to choose your own institution with people that also chose the same institution, that are studying the same things that you're studying if they're within your major, and that have a lot of similar experiences to you. Like, there's never going to be a time where that is going to happen on this large of a scale. Even though I go to a small college, we all have very similar interests and very similar experiences with other classmates and professors and what have you. The idea of missed opportunity to me is like, what if I just reach out to somebody who I've been wanting to talk to or want to be friends with? Like, what if I just for a minute, I realize that somebody has a birthday tonight that I have to decide whether or not I want to go. Anyways, I have to get back to what I was talking about. I realize sometimes I just have to pursue people that I have interest in, because I will never be in a moment to like pursue a friendship with them, unless, like, we end up living in the same city post grad, or if I just end up befriending them on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat, whatever. There would never be a time like this where I can just do that with a bunch of people. I can just reach out to a bunch of people, form a bunch of friendships, and like that may lead to like something else. And even if it doesn't lead to something else, it's like, oh wow, I pursued a friendship and I could have a lifelong friend out of it. But like, when you spend time alone, you are recognizing that you are so comfortable with yourself that it doesn't really matter about who's around you, because you're prioritizing like you and not the experiences you could be having. So I don't know if I'm missing out on any like amazing, super cool friendships simply because I don't want to put myself through that, which is um, another con, I guess. The idea of like, no, let me put this in a pro and con. This is like the idea that this is not neither a pro or con. When you spend time alone, I feel like it is a pro to be like, I have already tried to make friends with other people. Like, I'm not this little hermit crab who only comes out once every couple of months. Um, I've tried to introduce myself. I've tried to make friends. Like, I've tried to get to know new people. But the con is that, like, you don't know if you're wasting your time until you are a few weeks, days, months, years in to that friendship. So I don't even know if this goes in pro or con, but I feel like I should give myself some credit for knowing that I am doing what I can in order to make friends, in order to prioritize my own comfort, in order to feel good about spending time alone, in order to just like live my life the way that I would like to. I'm only figuring out the way that I want to live through mistakes and successes and just regular experiences. And a lot of those mistakes have been like friendships, the amount of friendships I came into college with. And the amount that I have now is a fraction. It's a fraction. And I guess sometimes when I think that back to myself, it makes me a little bit scared because I'm like, I know a lot of people look at that as like a what's that called? A red flag. You know, like a bunch of people, like if you constantly are losing a bunch of people in your life, like that's a little bit of a red flag. Like, why can't people just stay around in your life? Like, do you have suspicious behavior? No, sometimes people just have bad picks in friends. Me trying to talk myself into it. Sometimes like people are just bad people. Like the past 20 friends that I've made are just, they're all not cool. Yeah, so this is a pro and a con. Like, I recognize that I've tried my hardest to make friends with people, but some people are just not meant to be friends with you. Some people are just not compatible with you as friends. So dealing with that is a pro and a con, because it's like, pro, okay, at least we found out that they're not for us and we can move on and either move on to somebody else who could be for us and who could like fill that void of them not being in our life, or we can just learn to self-reflect and like find out what we really want. And it's weird because it's like when you go through friendship breakups or when you make a friend and lose a friend, it's not like a romantic thing where it's like, oh well, whatever, somebody else will fulfill this role. It's like somebody will or they won't. You'll have to like go through life figuring that out, which is really interesting. A pro about being alone is that in my opinion, is that I feel like I know myself really well. I feel like a lot of people in their 20s don't have an idea of their identity simply because they've grown up in spaces where like maybe their identity wasn't controlled, but like people around them were similar to them enough to where like your identity was planted within people, ideas, sports, extracurricular activities. Like those were your identities. Like that's what shaped your identities. Whereas like I didn't really grow up with those specific things. I feel like I grew up having a strong idea of my identity because my parents like weren't stable enough to give us things that would root our identities into 1, 2, or 3 things. Like my identity is planted in a million different things. Like I have the identity of being an adoptee, a missionary kid, somebody who's moved around a lot. I'm pretty creative. There are just a lot of things for me to identify with that are not like I couldn't solely make my identity, whereas like I feel as though other 20-year-olds are like struggling with what they identify with, simply because, you know, you move out of your like hometown, you go to college, you don't have those things that shaped your identity, and then you're looking at them through like your groups of friends, and then you and your friends in college all kind of like stimulate each other because you can depend on each other because you have similar backgrounds or whatever, and then you lose that, and then you're out of college and you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do now that I don't have lacrosse, my best friend Bethany, and my hometown? You know, I feel like I truly do know myself because I've constantly only had me. I've only had myself. I'm not serious, but I am at the same time. Yeah, I feel like I have a strong sense of identity because I spend a lot of time alone, and because I don't have a background of being stable enough to have like only a couple things to identify with. And that's really nice, because I think that when you have a strong identity, you are strong enough to take on multiple situations that you have to go through alone. Luckily, in the next phase of life that I have, since I'm getting married, I'll be going from being legally single, you know, like legally like on your like tax forms single, to married. Why did I say it like that? I'm going from being an independent person. That's the word. What was I saying? Going from an independent person to maybe not a dependent person, but somebody who can depend on other. I am very happy that I have a strong enough identity to where, like, when we get married, my fiance and I don't have to feel like my identity is only within him. Like, I know that I'm even the thought of that just makes me giggle, because it's like within him. That's so funny. The idea of only finding like a purpose within another person is kooky. It's so, which is why I feel like a lot of, you know, married couples get married, but I don't feel like we both are dependent on each other for that. But yeah, those are some of the pros and cons. I don't have like, you know, like a complete polished list, but I wanted to share that because I feel like when you're alone, it can be so empowering sometimes. Like, as an introvert who follows a bunch of like introvert pages and who reads books on what introversion is and how it affects your life, sometimes I feel like it's this positive, amazing thing that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm living my life for me. Everything is amazing. But then I just have moments where I'm sad, and I look at other people having a good time and identifying with other people, being in community and enjoying their community. And I'm like, am I messed up? Am I weird for not having friends in a community and a friend group? Am I am I a loser? Am I not okay? Like, should I want that? But I know that I'm okay. So those are just me kind of talking out. That's me talking out the pros and cons of what it feels like to be alone. Because I kind of just needed to talk that out. Even though I ultimately know that I'm okay, in my journey of being alone, like I said, just needed to speak it out and talk on YouTube, the very casual space, where I'm talking about this casual topic that I know at least a couple people can identify with as well.